I thought I muted you. Cool. So I'll start again. Welcome, guys. This is DL Live. This is a daily stream in which we talk about various design topics. Sometimes I play games and talk about them. Sometimes I make games and talk about them. But every time you're going to get some kind of design-focused activity. For tonight, I'm reflecting on this game, Soft Body. This is a game I heard about a long time ago, but only recently got around to playing it. My name is Richard Terrell. I go by Kirby Kid. I'm a game design critic. I'm a game designer, and I'm also an analyst. So I've been running this channel for a while, and this is a daily show that I'm trying to do. You can follow us at Twitter at DesignOriented. And the random fact for today is that I also can play piano. And the reason why I drag this thing out from the other room is because one of the most interesting comparisons that I can make, one of the most interesting ways I can describe what it's like playing this game, Soft Body, is that it's like learning how to play piano, or at least the hardest part about learning piano for a lot of beginning players from what I hear. So to give you an idea of what that means, I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And we are going to go, what are we going to do? Tutorial? Just going to show you what the game does. Your Soft Body can paint walls. So this is the left stick here. And you can move it a little bit or you can move it a lot. And the stages are sort of unlocked by your ability to paint these objects. Sometimes they're round, sometimes they are blocks, but whenever you see an object, you can paint it. So this is a ghost body. You can touch it, and now two of them become one. And it's only with the second color that you're able to move this ball along the line and get it to the goal. And all you have to do is really get it close, and the ball moves on its own. So in this case, you can see that it's both objectives in one, and you can't beat the level until you complete all the objectives. So here's a situation where you start off separated, and it says avoid projectiles. So with this left one, if you get hit, you die, so you avoid those. And you can do these objectives one at a time, or you can merge up and try to do them at the same time. But that's just some basic level sequencing that you can do. Like you can either do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or you can try to do them all at the same time. Kill two birds with one stone. So these are enemies, and they can only be hurt by the red guy. So now that we're merged, we can handle both things, and it's fine. Here's an example of winding the ball all the way to the middle to complete the objective. So everything looks pretty straightforward. You can kill things. And this particular hazard shoots off bullets whenever you're pushing the ball around, which gets incredibly dangerous the closer and closer you are to completing it. And even though it looked like I died there, I actually beat the level. It's kind of confusing. So then you realize, oh, things layer up, and sometimes enemies like to run away from you. That's fine. But on a base level, just tracing a sharp object with a smooth analog stick is it's an interesting contrast of interactions. It's kind of like how Mario exists in a blocky world, but his jump is highly curved. So this is the first level where they teach you with the right analog stick. You can detach the ghost. I probably should adjust that screen size just a little bit. There we go. So now you can see a little bit more. So the yellow one can't get out of the yellow box in this case, but this guy can. I'm not sure what the objective is right now. Oh yeah, kill these guys. So my secondary dude, the red dude, is invincible, so you can keep using him over and over if you want. This is an example of the yellow can only crack the outside, but the red guy is the only one that can kill the enemy. So you kind of have to work together and kind of coordinate or alternate like this. and just make sure that the yellow dude doesn't get hit. So instantly you got that, you know, pat your head, rub your tummy kind of stuff, where you're controlling two at once. And if you're not coordinated, you'll often try to, you know, control both in the same direction. But when you get really comfortable with the game, you can sort of independently watch and react with each unit. And get the job done. So yeah, I played this game for a lot of hours. The game, as you can see here, the game is pretty simple and straightforward. And every level from the tutorial section, this is the main section, allows you to split up your dudes, your little soft bodies, if you will, and the ghost bodies, and get the multiple objectives done. Obviously, the game's going to get progressively harder, so let's go to level select and I'll show you what that looks like. So that was level 2, basically, and it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. And then you go on to the next world. Chapter 1, here's chapter 2 and 3, and levels galore, right? It's some weird menu, weird indie stuff where it's kind of confusing to know what's even happening. Colors kind of hurt my eyes right now. That's okay. I like how everything just keeps flowing. The new objectives just kind of teleport in, so nothing has too jarring of a transition. Oh, I got killed. Yeah, I'm not doing that one again. So those are the normal levels, what we call the soft game, and it says introductory level for new players. For all those levels, that secondary controlled soft body is invincible, so you can use it and throw it into danger, do all kinds of risky stuff, and never have to worry about it. But then in the hard game, this is where the game gets super hard. And essentially you have, look at this, 25 levels where if either snake, either soft body gets killed, it's game over and you have to reset the whole thing. So you start off controlling them independently, and you cannot merge them ever. For like convenience, you never merge them. So this very basic gameplay, right? That was like the easiest hard level you'll ever see. But now you can start to see the combinations start to work out. Like one character is trapped in the box, the other character is trapped outside the box. They both have to look out for their independent obstacles. Some obstacles do a good job of cutting through things, some don't. And you're just never completely safe. Then you have stuff like this, where even though it's kind of hard to see the contrast of the two, like I know the one on the right is my primary soft body and the one on the left is my secondary. But as you can see, the thing in the middle is constantly shooting stuff. And then the one on the right needs to start taking care of this tracer, but you can't cross the green line because it's a laser. And you have to do these two things at once. And both things have to stay on the screen, so it's not hard to look at two things at once. It's definitely hard to coordinate which one's which, right? That's the hard part. And believe it or not, this level that you see right here is actually one of the easiest ones, one of the easier ones, even though it says hard. It's all relative, and I'll show you some of the really hard stuff in a moment. Oops. And sometimes I get my controls mixed up. Cool. I don't want to do that one. So look at how hard this level is. This inner ring kills the blue guy like that if you look carefully. So wherever the red goes, the blue has to semi-trace, and you have to get used to the different rates in which you move the analog sticks, right? In order to keep everything coordinated while still accomplishing your independent objectives, right, on the outside. Those blue dots fired into the middle can definitely kill the blue guy, so you gotta independently watch and control. Oh, yeah, and figure out which one it is. Looks like it gets a little harder. Definitely a little harder. Let's see, which is one. Stare, circle, 3 circles. And then some levels are incredibly hard like this. Where testing skills that video games almost never test, right? Like, if you look at people play Mario 64, you'll notice that even though you have this analog stick and you can move in just about any direction you want, most people do not move evenly in all directions. They actually hold forward a lot and try to line up the camera to where their forward direction is as consistent as possible, no matter what jump they're making. Like, they try to line up on the side and jump, or line it up on their backs and jump. And yeah, so that means a lot of different combinations of direction, especially moving 2 analog sticks at once. Never get stressed in video games. You almost never ever have to do anything like this. So not only is this controller feel right here, this game feel, really odd, but the whole idea of moving the analog sticks gingerly, like with really soft touches, it's not really stressed a lot in video games. You don't have a lot of games like Monkey Ball, and even though you can walk in just about every game with an analog stick, most of the time people just crank it forward and hit the sprint button. So you don't have to do this too much ever. And then moving them in 2 opposite directions, you never have to do. And not only are these 2 circles moving in opposite directions, but they're moving at different rates. So, like, trying to figure out which one's which and coordinate which one's going where, that's a skill that's incredibly hard. But if that wasn't hard enough, like, each one of these hard levels has a hard plus version, right? So just taking the one we just looked at, 3 circles. They even have an even harder version. Look at this. What is this? So hard. Why? So, yeah. Like, you can see me kind of doing it, which is because I've beaten this whole game. So I beat every level in this game, and including all the hard plus, and all the bonus levels. And at some early point, it seemed not worth my time. It seemed quite impossible, especially considering that these are stressing skills and challenges that were long and frustrating and really crazy. Like, I'll show you another one. Snake and Date at 8 on hard mode. So this is one where if you're in these little circles for any period of time, they flash and they can kill you, right? And then this yellow dot is always following the blue guy. And the blue guy will get killed if he touches it, but the yellow guy can eat the dots, right? So with one hand, you're trying to trace a dynamic snake line. The other one, you're trying to push a ball like this and maneuver around both simultaneously without getting killed. Incredibly difficult. This one was incredibly difficult. And if you get past this, there's another stage that's even harder. But the basic idea with a lot of these challenges just stems from this idea that you're controlling 2 things at once. I kind of want to talk about that in terms of what that means in game design and what other games do that's similar and what we can learn from it. So, you know, that famous Miyamoto quote, let's see if I can find it, because it's not worth making up quotes about Miyamoto. Miyamoto quote, doing 2 things is much harder. Let's see. Miyamoto quote, doing one thing is easy, but doing both at once is much more interesting. It keeps giving me the Rush game is bad forever. Why? Well, Miyamoto made this quote basically like, action games are really simple and straightforward, and doing one thing is really simple. You're like, oh, it's so easy. Jump over barrels in the original Donkey Kong, easy. And then doing the second thing is easy. Like, oh, walking up the scaffold, super easy. But as soon as you put both things together, it becomes much harder than both things individually. So it's just a natural experience that we understand with action games, where doing 2 things at once is much harder than doing them independently. And it takes a lot of brain power. It takes a lot more brain power than you think to do two things at once. And you either have to have one so well learned that you have enough free brain power to pay attention to the other thing. But what Softbody does is like you're probably never going to get too comfortable controlling two things at once. But your eyes are going to have to learn how to read the entire environment and know which character is which and have them think almost independently. I always imagine it being like octopus tentacles, and apparently they have like a brain inside each one so they can just feel their way along and do what's necessary to make the octopus move. So I always thought it was a neat idea that when you're doing two things at once, that each limb, each finger that you have controlling it can make decisions for itself so that it doesn't have to tax your brain so much. But it certainly feels like that when you get good enough to beat Softbody. But the piano analogy I want to make was that an early stumbling block for a lot of piano players seems to be doing two different things with one thing with one hand and another thing with the other. So one way it's described is like, oh, people can kind of get the, what is it? And I'll mute Softbody so that the music's not so, how about that? Yeah, okay. So, a lot of people can get the one hand and they like... But then they can't quite get the second hand. So then, you know, early piano songs just have them like do one thing. And they kind of get used to like blocking it down with one hand and like a clump and then focusing all their attention on the right. But there's obviously piano songs that get much more complex than that. And a lot of people have a hard time doing two things at once. And initially it's a, you know, it's a balance and distribution problem. Like how much brain power can you devote to one thing and then quickly get back to the other? I mean, everyone knows when you pat your head and rub your tummy, right? You know, I've done it so much that I can just do it on command since I was a kid. But essentially like, oh, if you focus on the one and then just kind of let it do its own thing and then focus on the other, you can do quite a lot of different activities simultaneously, like walking and eating, driving and eating, walking and talking, patting your head, rubbing your tummy. So this isn't unique to video games, and this isn't something that's unnatural to the common human experience. But people seem to have a hard time when... I mean, I guess you could say it's a double challenge, learning something new and then learning something new and doing it at the same time as something else. So, you know, you can imagine that... doing both things with, or it's the same thing with both hands, you can spare yourself a little bit of brain power because even though, like, when you play piano, let me see if I can show you, my pinky here does the same thing as my thumb here, so that when I roll them in the same direction, it's actually moving in the opposite way my hand is. The human brain is wired to where doing mirror actions is super easy, so everyone should be able to do this without much thinking. So doing the same thing with both hands should be fairly simple. There's all these other interesting skills that I had to learn playing piano. That when I was playing Softbody, I'm like, oh yeah, I haven't had this feeling in such a long time because almost nothing asks you to do these kinds of things, which is why I love arrow looping with Pit and Super Smash Bros. Brawl, where you're constantly controlling the arrows with one hand and doing things with the other hand. I love playing Duck Hunt for that same reason, like manipulating two things simultaneously. That's why I eventually put in enough time in Softbody to basically 100% it. But there's songs like, what are they? Where one hand starts and then the other hand follows, and then you just keep that going. There's a very specific sort of feeling you get in your brain when you have to like hold an idea and then like manipulate it and then like slightly delay it. So something like that. There's a whole series of songs that basically start on the one hand and echo in the second, and they're like Bach inventions, and I think other inventions do the same. But there are levels in Soft Body that have you following yourself. There are certain times when... Nice slow line. What is this? Oh my gosh. I don't even remember this one, but there are certain times when you have to do one thing with one hand and almost do the same repeated action with the other, but you have to do it with the other colored Soft Body, and you have to do it with a delay, and like it gets super intense like this. So like there's no right or wrong answer to playing a lot of this game. Like you got to do what it takes, and sometimes it requires a shuffling. Shuffling of your attention. See, I had to cut a hole for myself right there. Let's see if I can get it. Yeah, that was fun. Wow. So yeah, sometimes you shuffle back and forth. Sometimes you have to control two simultaneously. There are some levels that are so vast, so big. Where is it? This one. Look at this level. So this level has stuff up here. Lots of enemies, unique challenges, unique things to spin, unique bombs up here, a unique path to trace, these sniper units, these explodey units and everything. And enemies that home you down and can only be killed by the blue guy, and spit out enemies, and then things that shoot out balls. Like, this is one of the biggest, most complex levels. It's also one of the most interesting levels in the game, but essentially sticking together is hard, separating is hard. Because the camera scrolls, you can't keep everything neatly on the screen. Which enemies you decide to take out first, it's its own sort of strategic challenge. Which enemies you leave to the last, which enemies, when you leave longer, create more and more problems later. Just all these different sort of sequential challenges that you have to tackle instead of just doing things as they come. This game has a lot of issues. I think it's too hard. I think having some kind of checkpoint system or life system would have been helpful. I think they even let you set it in the menu, but what does it say? Number of lives here, right? I don't even think this applies to the hard modes. I'm not even sure what it applies to, but essentially there's no reason when the skill is this foreign and this hard to make players stop and replay so many of these challenges over and over. But you're gonna have to cut your teeth on something, and the tutorials are easy enough, and then the main game is easy before it gets into hard and then hard plus. So obviously the difficulty goes from like super easy to incredibly difficult, and you've got to fall somewhere in there. I just thought it was interesting relating to different songs that I've played and finding very specific moments in Soft Body that reflect that. This song, what was it? Chopin Minute Waltz. There's one of the early songs that I learned that had a lot of hand crossing. with this hand's bouncing back and forth and this hand's stable. And there's like parts in this game that reminded me a lot of that. But these levels are so hard to navigate. Like, how am I supposed to use this? So when the objectives are laid out clearly like this, and you're like, okay, when you have to trace with one of the soft bodies completely around. Oh. Another cool thing about this game is you hold the right trigger, your character goes super slow for fine-tuned movement like this. Very helpful. Oops, shoot. One thing that does remind me, this game has two... Oh, I have another life because I selected 3 lives. That's interesting. This game has 2 fine grain of enemy hitboxes. Like, there's no reason the dots should be that small. Like, I know it's high res, and you have like a minimalist style, but like fidelity, like you gotta be able to see these bullets. You gotta be able to, oh no, you gotta be able to see the bullets. You gotta dodge them. You gotta do all these things, and like some of the bullets travel too fast on the screen. And I feel like for shoot 'em ups, what we learned from a whole long history of shoot 'em ups, you don't need to make the bullets fast. Bullets are already deadly as it is, so they don't need to race across the screen. They're probably going to catch you off guard. And again, it's hard to keep track of so many different moving objects anyway that you don't need to make it that much harder for the player. I think, contrary to what most people think, making things slow is what makes them both harder and interesting. And the faster that things get, the harder it is to sort of see, react, apply more of your knowledge and brain power and skill to, and it just becomes very one note. It kind of collapses the skill that you can apply the faster things get. It makes you rely more and more on memorization. Did I already do this one before? So yeah, you'll often have it very much feels like when you're doing the inner color, the red color, and chasing on the outside with the blue, it has this sort of echo-like effect because you have to move the inner one in a clockwise or counterclockwise fashion, and then the blue one, just to keep your brain sane, you often move it in a similar fashion, so it has that like echo quality that I pointed out before in the music. And also because the outer circle is much wider than the inner circle, the 2 loops that you do with your 2 hands are never going to be like perfectly synced because one's got to travel so much farther. Yeah, so this is still like the normal gameplay, so the blue guy is invincible and I can kill him as many times as I want. Yeah, these levels are so easy now. So let me see if I can level select. There's some secret levels that are made so secret that I don't remember how to access them. But yeah, it's an interesting game. I checked online to see if anyone else had beaten it. I don't know if I found anyone. And it kind of makes sense because the skill is so obscure, and it just made me want to quit so many times. It took so much more time to do a few of these last hard plus levels than it did the whole rest of the game. And you know that's a frustrating feeling. Like even just beating this level took 6, 12, 18, 24, like 5 minutes of just slowly working the level. Like, ah, man, it's so hard. And one hit and you're dead. What's another good one? 5 against 3? So this one's... Yeah, this one's hard to see, but there's these invisible lines that if you pass them, they electrocute briefly after you pass through them. And since the lines cut through the whole stage, you gotta make sure that both guys aren't triggering the lines for each other and killing each other. It's not easy. And then meanwhile, you gotta run the line and trace these things and trace the ball all the way around the outside. That one's really difficult, especially when I can't see. This one's crazy. So you can let one distract the enemies like this at the top. And then this big ball can only be moved by the blue guy, so he's got to stay put. And then enemies start coming in. And I don't know how to deal with them half the time. And then there's bullets that come down, and then rotating platforms. And you're like, this is too much. This is way too much. I figured out some of these cool little cheats like this, but then you still have to deal with some of the incoming enemies. Certainly creative levels. Oh yeah, so this is... What's the deal here? How do I get out of this? Oh, so this inner hole, I gotta cut my way out. I gotta cut for the blue guy. There you go. I eliminated those. Okay, it's gonna go to phase 2. And now there's an orange enemy constantly chasing the blue, which I gotta steer away. And then I still gotta be mindful of the giant rotating attack. So then I gotta cut down, make sure the orange enemy cuts my way through the blue here. Yep. And then I gotta start the ball moving. But then I gotta get out of this trap before I get trapped. And then I gotta keep it going and cut my way out and then go down. And then messed up. That's a little insane. Having something chase you, leave this dynamic death trail, have you only be able to get rid of it like Icargo with half of your polarity, and then have this huge clockwise timer sort of pushing you around. But one thing's interesting. Let me see if I can figure out how to get to the secret levels, because I completely forgot. But yeah, when you compare the dexterity required to do a lot of real life things compared to video games, you realize how little video games actually test you. People talk about fighting game combos and stuff all the time, but like musical instruments are so much more complex. It's ridiculous. The very fact that you have stuff like, what is it? What is it? What was that? So there's a part in the song where you basically hold the notes with 2 fingers at a time, but then you have to play the next note with one of your free fingers. So in order to keep 2 notes held at the same time, you have to do this weird spider motion. And it sounds like I have the pedal held down, but I actually don't have the pedal down there. You can see there's nothing down there. So you're pretty much doing the sustain with your fingers. Like that. And if it didn't have that effect, it would sound like this. And then even when you're doing that, you have to control your dynamics. So if you start off loud, and then you can do it fast and play it up to tempo, and then you got to balance it with the right hand. The amount of control that you have, it's so straightforward, it's so direct, but it's all in your fingers, so you're going to be spending the rest of your life trying to master this stuff. Video games have nothing on this. Like even Soft Body, like you can play it, 20 hours, 15 hours, 11 hours, and you'll master the entire game if you know how to practice and you know how to develop the techniques. But otherwise, like, I don't know, I feel like with video games you can put the difficulty, if you really understand what you're doing with game design and your craft, you can put the difficulty anywhere you want, in the controls, in the rules, in the strategy, in the upkeep, like any part of the experience you can add it where the majority of the player's focus needs to be. And most people don't put it in the controls. People complain about motion controls all the time. I think it's mostly because they aren't used to putting more effort and energy into learning what's happening with their fingers and using more skillful control of their body, which is fine because it's not easy. But I love motion controls. You know, I play a lot of different instruments, I play a lot of different video games, and I do a lot of different kinds of hobbies and activities, and each of them teach you something new, and you got to cut your teeth on it somehow. So you can hardly play sitting in the wrong direction. So that's mainly a lot of the cool stuff I wanted to show you with Softbody. With 2 analog sticks, there's only so much you can do. I guess the only musical instrument that reminds me most directly of is a theremin, where you're kind of controlling the pitch and the whatever, just with your distance away from it and above it. But you know, most of the musical instruments are based on like air pressure and tension and have a variety of different levers and keys and strings and whatever that you're pressing. And I just feel like video game controllers never ask you to do too much at once. I mean, the particular, you know, PS2, Xbox 360 style controller layout where they put the majority of their main commands on the triggers now, so that it frees you up for using your analog sticks, and you can just do this all the time. Spelunky having its run button up here instead of on the face button like a Mario game, and a lot of shooters having, you know, your grenade button up here, your shoot button up here, and if you're in like boxer style, your melee buttons over here for Halo. That just kind of changed the way a lot of games play. And there's like so many different things you can say about controller layout, but ultimately it just comes down to what your core gameplay is in the first place and what genre you're operating in. So, you know, if you have any questions about Softbody, let me see what the Twitch chat say. Twitch chat says one of the things we talked about in the older streams was that this game could have used hit points, because as it is now, every run is a no-hit run, and motion is more difficult to interpret the smaller it is. So I showed you the live system that was put into the game, and it only really affects the main normal levels and not these super hard levels anyway, so you're kind of stuck. I kind of want to show you those secret levels. Let me see if I can find them. I'm pretty sure they're right here. I just had that guy's name. His name is Godsink, and from users. Yeah, like, I'm in the main menu. I don't understand. Where are my secret levels? Where are my secret levels? I don't know. But he made a series of extra levels, and it's interesting because they are much more tame. They took out so many. He took out so many of the like sprays of bullets and so many crazy elements going on, and all that screen scrolling stuff. And he just simplified the game to having fewer elements that interact dynamically and just focusing entirely on them. And the levels were easier in a lot of ways, but they were more focused and more interesting. And that's the kind of thing I was trying to communicate in a lot of the Mario Fixer videos, like. Chasing some arbitrary difficulty experience is not nearly as interesting and good as using your interactivity and your core gameplay to convey an experience and then making that as efficient and as elegant and as clearly or as clearly communicated as possible. And then that speaks so much more of your game. So what if people beat it too easily or whatever? I mean, the whole point of your game is to set up challenges to where it's not too hard, not too easy, so that players can get the skill to then beat it consistently. And when you can beat it consistently, you have the skills anyway. Because I have the skills to beat like almost all these levels on, at least on hard, still on about the first try. So it's like the fact that if you're counting too much that players are dying or not dying, I just feel like you're missing the point of making games, and you're not crafting an experience that's about more than just abstract challenge. So, hope you guys enjoyed the stream. That was it for Soft Body for now. I'm going to noodle around on the piano for another few minutes and then, cut this out of the YouTube. But, like us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, join us on Discord if you have questions yourself. If you've played any weird games that caused you to move the analog stick in two different directions, I heard Brothers is like this. I have it on my PC. I've never played it. In a lot of ways, games like Mario Galaxy, where you're controlling Mario with the analog stick and using that pointer simultaneously, that's a really cool example of sort of doing two things at once, even though the pointer has no sort of threat or drawback or whatever. You can always often find little examples of this happening in various games. So, if you come up with anything, tweet at me. Otherwise, I will see you guys next time on DO Live. What's cool about that song, the Final Fantasy song, I've been playing that song for a long time, since high school. It's really simple and it kind of repeats. But the weirdest part about that song is it's the same set of notes for the right hand and the left hand. You just play them slightly off from each other. But then when you play the next chunk, it's the same exact spacing of the notes, just slightly down on the piano. So essentially you're doing the same thing like 8 or 16 times in a row. And what's weird is I could play the first part easy. And then when I repeat the same thing just 2 notes down, I lose it for some reason. Except for there. And the weird part is I had this problem with that song for so long. And I'm like, well, how do I fix this? Practice, and not quite getting it. But then I played Soft Body, and this game, like I said before, was really stressing a lot of the same sort of parts of my brain and giving me sort of flashbacks to when I was learning piano. Cut my teeth on this game, and then when I went back to play it on piano, I was like, this is no longer hard. So for whatever reason, the kind of mental focus that I used to beat Soft Body helped me overcome hurdles on a song that I've been playing for 10 years or whatever. And I just find that super interesting. There's so many mysterious and interesting connections that you can draw when you're a little bit more aware of how your brain works, what it feels like when it's learning, and what kind of learning environments you're putting yourself in. And the fact that I recognized that Soft Body was reminding me of piano is neat. But then the fact that it actually helped me play piano better, it's something that's sort of completely mysterious and untested, and it's something I want to look more into the future. So we'll talk a lot more about learning and things. In a few more episodes, I'll tell you about this game that I've been working on for the last year and a half. If you played it, you know about it. If not, there's an open beta, but I'll give you more details on that later. I'm going to get back to piano.